إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذي كفروا بربهم يعدلون هو الذي خلقكم من طين ثم قضى أجلا فأجل مسمى عنده ثم أنتم تمترون وهو الله في السماوات والأرض يعلم سركم وجهركم ويعلم ما تكسبون. All praises and thanks be to Allah, who alone created the heavens and the earth and originated the darkness and the light. Yet those who disbelieve hold others as equal with their Lord. He it is who created you from clay and then decreed a stated term for you to die. And there is with him another determined term for you to be resurrected. Yet you doubt in the resurrection. And he, Allah, to be worshipped alone in the heavens and on earth. He knows what you conceal and what you reveal, and he knows what you earn, good or bad. The believers gather on this day, which is the best day of the week, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hoping that he accepts our ibadah. I greet you with that greeting of peace and love. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We know from Abdul-Ahad, we recited, in Jumu'ah, and the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, it gives us pause to think and to ponder about certain things. But today I want to take a look at, and bear with me, some aspects about definitions of individuals that we mention all the time. We constantly talk about the Sahaba, radiallahu anhu, and we talk about the Tabi'in. And we talk about the Tabi'in. So we talk about the companions. And we talk about the successors to the companions. And we talk about the successors to the successors. But what is the definition given about these individuals? What makes them special when we look at it? And what is the connection with us? And then, as I go on to discuss it, I hope we make the connection that we'll see that we are in a very special circumstance as it regards the three groups that I just mentioned and what the Prophet ﷺ said about those who are his brothers. Okay, so this is what we want to take a look at. So when we look at the Sahaba, radiallahu anhu, the Sahaba, male and female, is anyone alive in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, before his death, who accepted his message, belief in the oneness of Allah, and died upon that. Not going back on the circumstance of that. So again, the Sahaba, radiallahu anhu, all of them, male and female, they saw the Prophet ﷺ. They listened to him. They accepted his message. They accepted the message that he was bringing and belief in the oneness of Allah. They practiced that and they died upon that. This is the definition of a Sahaba. And undoubtedly, there were many great Sahaba, both male and female. And this is one thing we have to remember. When we say Sahaba, the companions, it's not just limited to the males in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Khateeb radiallahu anha was a Sahaba. Aisha radiallahu anha was a Sahaba. Hafsa was a Sahaba. So all of these women who lived at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and they embraced Islam, they accepted his message, accepted him, and the aspects of the Quran and believing in it, and practicing it, and died upon it. They fall into that realm of the Sahaba, of being Sahaba. And we know from amongst the Sahaba, there are those, through the grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was told and knew before they went to their deaths that paradise had been promised to them. Wasn't all of the Sahaba. For lack of a better term, we say a select few. But nonetheless, that first generation, and we know them well, or we should know them well. We should read about them and understand who they are and the example that they give to us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us in the example of them what can be accomplished with every intention and every act that we do, that the niyyah is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost. Okay, so I'm not saying anything new here that you don't know, but just a re-emphasis on these individuals as a generation, and I'll make the connection later, inshallah ta'ala. So we look at the things that the Sahaba accomplished after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's astounding that in their belief in La ilaha illallah and in following the message in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that they were able to accomplish what they did. So the Prophet dies in current era, 632, current era. By 685, the Muslim Ummah has expanded well beyond the boundaries of the Arabian Peninsula in and of itself. And we can say, this is the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted to the Prophet's Ummah. Those who saw him, accepted his message, the Quran, followed his Sunnah, and died upon that. In some instances, we see, in the case of Umar ibn al-Khattab, he was promised paradise. And if we look at the way that he died, in praying the Salat-al-Fajr, and he was attacked and he was murdered, we have to assume that his making the Salat-al-Fajr, he was doing it fi sabilillah, for none other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in dying in that circumstance, then through Allah's grace and mercy, as Allah knows best, he achieved what it was he was told during his lifetime that he would. Uthman ibn Affan, another, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Khalif Rashidun. And as the only one who died, but still had been promised achieving paradise, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq died from illness. So this was the Khalifa Rashidun, the rightly guided favors, taken out of that group of the Sahaba, who again were alive with the Prophet ﷺ, heard his message, accepted it, and died about it. You look at Khadija, radiallahu anha, Aisha, radiallahu anha, and those like them. No one, from what I was taught in school, male or female, receives more blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than Khadija, radiallahu anha, outside of the Prophet ﷺ himself. Because before anyone else, she did what? She heard his message, heard what he was saying, and took that step to believe in the message that he was bringing. And she died upon that. You look at Aisha, the Prophet's daughter, another. But even before them, if we want to talk about this, we look at Mary, and the Ralph of Pharaoh. So when we look at this, and we come to grips with what we see, in one sense to say it, the most outstanding Muslims, we find these four women. In the grace and mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them with. So when we look at the Tabai, those who saw the Sahaba, message from them, accepted, believed, and then they died upon it. And the Tabai. So it's important to note that the common thread that is combining all of these is that they heard the message, they accepted the Quran, they strove their best to follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and they died upon that belief. So when it comes to us, what position are we in as it relates to this? What is it that we know from the Prophet ﷺ? Hadith can be found in Sahih Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim. The Prophet sitting with some of the companions, and a discussion came up about who his brothers were. Because the companions sitting with him were fully believed they were his brothers. So in the course of the conversation, when he said, "No, you're not my brothers," if we were there in that group, after everything that the Muslims had went through with him, and he said that, we probably would have been just as astounded as they were. And then the Prophet ﷺ clarified what he was saying. And he said to them, "You are my companions. You are my companions." Which led to the question from the Sahaba who were with him, then who are your brothers? Who are your brothers? And the Prophet ﷺ gave a definitive answer. Those who will come after me, never see me, in essence, never hear his voice, but will accept the message that he brought, practice it, accept the Quran, and then, of course, die upon it. So these were whom he described as being his brothers. And for that fact, his sisters as well. So when we look at us in this time, in this frame, with all of the turmoil that's going on, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's every time you turn the TV on, you may see two men kissing, you may see two women kissing, the things that are being pushed, everything that we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden. and through the example of the prophets of Islam, we know should not be engaged in. And so with everything that's out there, this rush to be this, that, and the other, to be a they, to be binary, all of these things that are being talked about, none of them come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not one aspect of it. And thus Allah says this in the Quran, which we will get to inshallah ta'ala. So this circumstance here, look at ourselves. Question becomes, are we truly keeping in our minds that definition about the Prophet Prophet's brothers and sisters that he gave? Because we are amongst those who have done what? Not bragging, but only through Allah's grace and mercy. We have done what? We have heard the message, the Quran. We have studied the life of the Prophet and his Sunnah. And hopefully within each one of us, as the Prophet has said, that he means more to us than family relations and all mankind. And that we're willing, fi sabilillah, to die upon that. In the hopes that from and believing in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, and the examples that he has given, that if we do so, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts it, then that which we all want becomes a distinct possibility through the grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we have to understand, as the Sahaba really understood and generalizing about them, this doesn't happen if we aren't sincere in our intentions of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worshiping Him and Him alone, understanding that He has no partners. He doesn't share His majesty, His sublimeness, or any of His attributes with anything else. If we aren't about that and holding on to that, then what position are we putting ourselves in? A pretty dangerous one. And this is what we have to be aware of. The promises that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made to the Prophet ﷺ and his companions and those after them hasn't changed. It's as sound as it ever was, because who makes a promise and keeps a promise better than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If there are deficiencies, then the deficiencies are in us, not in the message, not in the Creator, but in us. And this is also what we have to be aware of. All types of fitna out in the world. Death and dying. People being shot and killed randomly for no other reason except to do it. A trial going on now for a person murdered. And the aspect about watching that trial, no remorse from the person who's been charged for having killed George Floyd. And one thing is for certain, that we need to understand and know. No remorse for the mistakes we make, and seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness puts us in a real bad circumstance. A real bad circumstance. Because without Allah's forgiveness, without His mercy, there is no achieving paradise. Not because I'm saying so, but because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said Himself. So constantly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, who say we believe, who say that we will go to our depths on this message, on his promises. He gives us indications all the time, lessons to be learned about the fitna that awaits and the fitna that is going on now. In the Quran, in Surah Ash-Shura, 89th, the 88th, and the 89th verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يوم لا ينفع مال بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. Again, Surah Ash-Shura, the 88th and the 89th ayats. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يوم لا ينفع مال بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. Translation: on that day, none will approach Allah. Your money and your use. يوم لا ينفع مال بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. So no one will approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our wealth, our sons, our daughters, our property will mean nothing. This ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the only ones who will be allowed to approach him are those who have Qalbin Salim, purified hearts, pure hearts. If that's not there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this ayah, there will be no approaching him. In the tafsir, this no approaching him means devoid of his mercy on the day that we need it most. So in Surah Ash-Shura, 8 ayats. يوم لا ينفع مالا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. And we constantly hear about this thing here, this heart, and the things that can happen to it. It being between the two fingers of Allah. And of course, it's not fingers like we understand fingers to be. So what Allah is saying emphatically, your wealth, your children, your family relations, on that day, as he says in Surah Al-Baqarah, La rayba fihi, in which there is no doubt, no one approaches him without having a pure heart. And how does the heart become pure? Through amal as-salih, through righteous deeds, and seeking Allah's forgiveness and mercy. Constant. Warring sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to overcome our nafs. Not being afraid to realize that everything we have, we don't have, is through Allah's grace and mercy. And I'll come back to that point later. So again, heart's not pure. And Allah says, no one, the heart that is not pure, will approach it on that day. However we want to describe that day, Yom Qiyamah, the day of sand, Yom Hisab, the day of accounting. That day, in which there is no doubt, no one will approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his own words, unless they have a heart that is pure. Qalbin Salim. Fully called it Hada. Astaghfirullah to be late. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khayril mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. When we look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, man in his arrogance seeks to equate himself with his creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is a fruitless and a wasted effort and time. No doubt about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Qasas, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وربك تخلق ما يشاء. Your Lord, Allah, creates whatever He wishes. Doesn't have to ask anybody's permission, doesn't need anybody's permission at all. ما كان لهم خيارة تصبح سبحان الله وتعالى عما يشركون. And for them, what is it in there for them? Subhanallah wa ta'ala amma yushrikun. Allah, protect us from those, in essence, of joint partners. Make us not be from amongst them. Allah says in Surah Al-Anbiya, 23rd ayah, لا يسألوا عما يفعلوا وهم يسألون. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, La yas'alu. Nobody questions him. La yasma'u amma yaf'alun wa hum yas'alun. Those who seek to try to question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, no one questions him about anything. And the ones doing the question will be questioned. So, in essence, Allah is saying that whatever He wishes to do, He does. Doesn't ask anyone's permission. Doesn't need anyone's permission. He is Al-Fatih, the Creator. Al-Khalid, the Creator. He's Rabbil Alameen, Lord of the worlds, and the owner of the heavens and earth and everything in between, including us. And so He says, no, you don't question me. I question you. And when is it that we will be questioned? Again, on that day, in which there is no doubt. On that day, when none will approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without having a pure heart. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said some other things. And this hadith is from Muawiyah, Abu Sufyan, Ibn Abi Sufyan. It's from Muawiyah, the son of Abu Sufyan. And if you've read anything about the seerah, you know who Abu Sufyan was. And Muawiyah, his son, becomes the 5th Khalifa after the death of Amr. Some have argued that hadith shouldn't be accepted from Muawiyah because of the discord that happened between him and Amr, the war, the civil war that was fought. However, in looking at the definition given for the Sahaba, and knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive whatever He wishes, of whomever He wishes, Muawiyah, after his father, when the Prophet successfully returned to Allah's grace and mercy to Mecca, embraced Islam, Muawiyah did as well. And he's a Sahaba. And in thinking the best about him, that he embraced the deen. He followed the Quran. Allah forgave him his mistakes and his errors. And he died upon the belief in La ilaha illallah. So Muawiyah relates that the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تزال طائفة ظاهرين على الحق لا يضرهم من خاذلهم حتى تقوم الساعة. This hadith, and in us struggling to be a part of this group, from Muawiyah, the Prophet ﷺ said, there will not cease to be a group of people from the Muslims who will be victorious upon the truth. They will not be harmed by those who abandon them or by those who oppose them until the establishment of the hour. So this circumstance here, again, there will not cease to be a group of people from the Muslims who will be victorious upon the truth. They will not be harmed by those who abandon them, nor by those who oppose them, until the establishment of the hour. This doesn't mean that these individuals on that group that the Prophet described, that will not cease to be a group from the Muslims, will be victorious upon the truth. What he's saying here is that his promise, the Prophet said, that group will be protected. That those who oppose them, and those who abandon them, would not be able to harm them. And that protection from Allah for that group will be there all the way until Yom Qiyamah. And at that junction, those who have opposed that group, warred against them for whatever the circumstance has been, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with them however He intends to. So what do we want to be as part of the group? How is it that we should work to be part of the group? It should not be that in this masjid, we have to beg for people to come and help do the things that need to be done. Because part of that group, that's part of what that group does. It shouldn't fall on 2 or 3 people. If we want to be a part of that group to which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extends that protection, then we have to be about taking care of this place. Pretty simple. Because Allah's promise is there. Allah's promise is there. If it wasn't, the Prophet ﷺ never would have narrated this hadith. And notice here, he hasn't picked out any race, any ethnicity. The guiding light here is there will not cease to be a group of people from amongst the Muslims. He didn't say Muslims from America, didn't say Muslims from Europe, in particular specifying, he said, but from the Muslims who will be victorious upon the truth. What is the truth that we wish to be victorious upon? Is it not Qala Allah, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is that not to be the criterion about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His sublimeness and His mercy will join our hearts together? If it's anything less than that, it doesn't work. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, He mentions about the people who are blind, deaf, and dumb. let me not be the one to say that Muslims are that way. Allah is best to know. But sometimes, physical things, physical actions or the lack thereof point to that fact. We say, we cry, we yell, oh Allah, grant us paradise, but we're not willing to do what it takes to get there. And for those who do, the few that do, may Allah bless them. And may He make more of us like them and how they come out and work to serve this masjid and this community. We act sometimes like if we do this, we're going to lose something. What is there to lose when Rabbil Alameen has made the promise that He's made? There's nothing to lose, but everything to gain. And we blow opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to gain Allah's grace and mercy. With all the examples we have before us and Allah's promises, we act like, well, yeah, I know you're Allah, but you know, I don't know if I can trust you or not. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Because that is the way we Muslims act at times. Everything we have, everything that we're protected from, comes from one and only one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is it that He asks of us? In the grand scheme of things, He's not asking a lot of us. And it would be another thing if we did not have the example of those who have gone before us, who trusted in Him without question. There's a hadith, and it's narrated by Abdul-Ahad ibn Suriya, a companion, radiallahu anhu. And it's from the Musnad, the collection of hadith by Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmahullah. And this is what Abdul-Ahad said. He said, the Prophet gave a khutbah. And he said, when they heard the khutbah, they felt in their hearts that the Prophet Saiful-Islam was saying to them that he wasn't going to be with them too much longer. And he said that those gathered there began to cry. They understood what was being said. He went on to say that the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, I have left you upon a clear and shining path that is just as visible in the night as it is in the day. He went on to say, meaning his sunnah and the Siratul Mustaqim, no one strays from it after me except one who is destroyed. Again, no one strays from it after me except one who is destroyed. those of you who live after me will see disagreement. And look at all the disagreements we have seen amongst the Muslims. Let's not even worry about those who don't believe in Islam, who aren't Muslim. Let's just look at all of the disagreements that occur amongst the Muslims, from ISIS to practically any other thing that you can see. Disagreements. Persons saying that you only have to follow the Quran, don't pay any attention to the Sunnah, that there is no such thing as the Sunnah. And so here, the Prophet ﷺ before dying has said, no one strays from it, the truth, after me, except one who is destroyed. Obviously, we don't want to be in that category. And he went on to say, in reference to, at the time, to grab onto his sunnah with our teeth and hold on to it and don't let it go. Can we say that? Can we say that's what we have done? And one last thing before closing. If you read this particular book, The Creed of the Imams, looking at Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, and Imam Shafi, you see you learn a lot in terms of when you see the confusion that happens in today's world between the followers, quote unquote, of these four great imams and their school of thoughts. I don't know where it's coming from, except besides the ignorance of them who are involved in the horrendous disagreements that take place. Even to the extent if one person sees that the person leading the salat follows Imam Malik and they follow Imam Shafi, they won't pray behind them. Because when you read this, you find out these four imams, rahimahullah, were on the same page. No ifs and buts about it, period. And if they were here, they would decry the confusion, even to the point of people being physically harmed, being done in their names. As one of them was beaten to death during his time by students of the other because he disagreed in a ruling that had been given. So, but here, I want to mention another hadith, because I said, not because I said, that the way to get that heart salim is to amal as-salih, through good actions, with the intent, purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This hadith is from Ali ibn Abi Talib, and you find it in Sahih Muslim. Ali describes and he talks about what they learned from the Prophet ﷺ about what happens after we're interred into the grave. And all of us here about the questioning or the punishment of the grave, about the angels that will come, and the questions that will be asked, and the answers given. But there's one part of this hadith that I don't think, including myself, I wasn't aware of it until I read it. As much as I heard about this circumstance. So the person is placed in the grave and the people leave. And after the person, whoever he or she may be, tries to follow, they're told, no, you can't go. This is where you will be. And as Ali radiallahu anhu narrated, said, angel appears and tells the person, he or she, sit. And the person sit. And then they're asked, who is your Lord? The person will say, Allah. What book do you follow? What's your deen? Islam. What book do you follow? The Quran. And the person, of course, will say that they're Muslim. Maybe two parts of the hadith people are unaware of. After that fourth question is answered, it says in the narration by Ali, a voice is heard. A voice is heard that says, he has spoken the truth, or she has spoken the truth. The voice says, dress them in the clothes of paradise. Dress them in the clothes of paradise and show them where their abode will be in paradise. The next part of the hadith was the part that really struck me, not bragging when I read it, because it says, a person will be brought before this person. In the hadith, it describes a man of a beautiful face, a handsome face, and nice clothes with a beautiful smell. And you will be introduced to this person with that voice has just said, indeed, he has told the truth, and then went on to say, this is what should be given to him. The person who has died will look at this person and say, do I know you? Do I know you from somewhere? And he said, you look to be a pious and good person. And that person will say to him, yes, you do know me, because I am your good deeds. On the other side of the coin, the person that hits that grave and can't answer those questions, there's a word that Allah uses in the Quran several times, waylu. And this word waylu means be woe unto you. That person, those persons who hit that grave with less than a salim heart, subhanAllah. In the hadith, it talks about those who disbelieve and how they will not be able to answer the questions. And instead of the grave being made expansive, as it was for the person mentioned in the first part of the hadith, the grave will constrict, and it says, till their ribs cross over with each other. Where do we want to be? Which one of us does not want to have when we hit that grave, which there's no doubt in that is not going to happen, that we have the experience in the first part of the hadith, that person we look at, we know, because through Allah's grace and mercy, it's our good deeds. So please, Muslims, let us wake up. Opportunity flees fast. Opportunity flees fast. None of us is going to live forever. at some point in time, Allah is going to say, it's time. And that time that has been given, however long or short it may be, when it's done, unless Allah extends it. And for some of us, as Allah knows best, our time may have been extended. And we'll never know, because all that can be said when we pass is that it was our time. For this masjid, for this masjid, for this community, if we want to be part of that protected group that Allah says will be victorious upon the truth from now until Yom Al-Qiyamah, then answer the call to come to this masjid, to this masjid, to help do the things that need to be done. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملت من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين أقيم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.